Let me guess, you signed up for every free lead magnet and binged on every marketing YouTube video and thought, what am I missing? Why isn't my business exploding like that? Well, I can tell you, you're not alone. Whether you're just getting started or have an established business, entrepreneurship can be really lonely. But it doesn't have to be. Overcoming your fear of launching or building your personal brand or figuring out how to scale, it shouldn't be holding you back. It should be empowering you. On this podcast, we're going to deep dive into the mechanics of what it takes to build your brand, make your mark, and stake your claim in the digital marketing space. I'll be chatting with people from all walks of life and stages in their careers. I will be getting inspiration from real experts who will share their actual strategies and techniques to grow loyal and raving followings and sell more stuff. This is entrepreneurship from people who are already there making it happen. My name is Jeff Mendelson. Join me and welcome to the One Big Tip podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Jeff Mendelson, and this is the One Big Tip podcast. And today I am very pleased to have Itamar Shatz on the line with me. Itamar is a Ph.D. candidate at Cambridge University in England and also the author of the website Solving Procrastination. So he's going to have a lot of great tips for us on the One Big Tip. So Itamar, welcome to the show.
Hi there.
So I wanted to take a minute and, in the pre-call, we were talking about these different things that you're interested in. One is your fascination with resolving procrastination for people, which is a huge topic, right? And that, a lot of people suffer from this, whether they admit to it or not. But also I wanted people to get to know what it is that you're studying, because I find that fascinating as well. Can you please take a few minutes to explain to people where you're at right now and what makes you tick?
Yeah. So I'm a linguistics student. What I focus on is basically looking at how people's native language affects the way they learn words in a second language. So I use large-scale databases in order to see if there is similarity between a word in their native language and between a word in their second language, they'll have an easier time acquiring it. That's one of the things that I find very interesting. In my non-academic life or less academic, I focus on essentially finding psychology and philosophy that have practical applications and writing about them in a way that helps people use them in practice, with one of the main topics being procrastination.
So part of your one big tip is talking about some practical steps on how to overcome procrastination, right? And without stealing too much of your thunder, it has to do with taking a huge, overwhelming project and breaking it apart into manageable steps. Even though that sounds really easy to do, there are some definitive steps that you need to implement in order to make that happen. Can you please go into it? Tell us a little bit about what that's about.
I think, first of all, one of the most important things to understand about procrastination is that it's not just an issue with managing time, but it's also an issue with managing emotions. For example, in a lot of cases, people procrastinate because they have a fear of failure, or because they're anxious, or because they're tired. And any tips or any techniques that you want to use in order to overcome procrastination have to take this into account. Now, one of my favorite tips is, like you said, breaking apart large, overwhelming projects into small, manageable steps. What this does, first of all, obviously it helps us organize, plan in advance from a time management perspective, but from an emotional management perspective, it's also very beneficial because it helps us reduce these overwhelming things that can make us anxious or averse and turn them into something that we know and feel that we can easily manage. In terms of how to do it in practice, what I would say, first of all, there isn't a single right way for everyone. Different people feel the need to break things apart into different sized tasks. Different people might have a different definition for what they find overwhelming. But in general, I think there are three main things I would recommend to people when implementing this tip. One, remember that you can break apart tasks as much as you want. A good rule of thumb is to make sure that no single task takes more than a session to complete. So basically, every task can be something that you can accomplish in one sitting. It could take 5 minutes or maybe an hour, but nothing that you have to pause in the middle. That way you always know you can finish it as soon as you sit down.
Interesting. Okay, that's a great definition.
Yeah. Another thing I think is very helpful, again, this isn't for everyone, but a lot of people find it beneficial to start with a very small step. So especially when it comes to starting projects, we often you have to get over that large hurdle in the beginning of actually getting started. And one of the ways to overcome that is to pick a really, really, really tiny step for the beginning that you can easily finish. And by doing that, you basically get into that mental mindset of, I've already started this project. So it can help you overcome the initial hurdle.
Okay, so basically what you're talking about there is, now that I started it, you're mentally telling yourself, now I need to finish something.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Interesting.
You basically show yourself, you help yourself integrate into the project, and you also show yourself that you can handle this thing. You've already managed to handle one bit of it, so you can handle the rest.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the third tip that I would give on how to implement this technique is, remember that you don't have to outline the entire thing from the beginning. So let's say you have a giant project to work with, like start a website. You don't have to have a list of 100 steps that you need to do from the start. And I think this can be overwhelming in itself and can lead to procrastination. Instead, try to focus on just a few steps, like maybe 3 or 5 steps in the beginning, write those down. And once you finish those, you can move on to figuring out what the rest of the steps are. This helps you keep those steps like to a manageable number that you feel you can easily handle.
Do you feel that sometimes when you're looking that when you outline a project that you need to work on and you find yourself breaking this up into 50, 100 tasks, and all their dependencies and all that, just looking at the massive size is enough to scare people, and that you need to just sort of like hide the end until you're ready for it? Or is it a question of being able to see the big picture before you begin?
I think for most people, it will obviously, there is some advantage to being able to see the big picture before you begin, but I think for the vast majority of people, it will be counterproductive because A, it will be overwhelming, and B, because it's very, very hard to plan the ending when you're just at the beginning. So I know personally for me, what I found is that I usually don't plan more than maybe at most 10 steps ahead while working on my Ph.D. I try to figure out what my next few steps are. Usually I keep it down to just like the next 3 items that I need to take care of. And once I finish those, I add in the next ones.
Okay, so that's really interesting. As a PhD candidate, you're juggling a lot of tasks and a lot of data, right? How do you organize that? Do you have a particular app or a few apps that you use as a PhD candidate that help you manage this workload?
Yes, I am an avid fan of Todoist for personal task management. I use it. I started using it, I think, a year and a half ago when I started the PhD, although I'm not 100% sure about that. But I do know that I use it in almost every area of life now. And I just find it very, very, very helpful.
So do you find yourself putting a grocery list as well as your to-dos for the week into the same app?
Yeah, personal, academic, websites, everything.
Wow, that's really cool. Do you have a particular way to organize those tasks? Like, do you just set them up with like main headers, or like how deep do you let that go? Do you let that go into detail?
So I try again not to fall into the trap of going into 20 level nested lists with hundreds of tasks. I try to cut myself off before I get there. But usually I started with something. I think here too, instead of saying I'll develop the perfect organizing mechanism from the beginning, I just said, let's start using this app. And over time it evolved. I figure out which categories I need, which types of organization hierarchies work for me.
What's great about that app is that, since it's cross-platform, you can use it on your iPhone or your Android, on your Mac or your PC. Wherever you open it up, it's there for you, and it's always synced. And it always has your back, because even once you get the premium version, then you can start tagging things, and you can implement a little bit of automation in there as well. So it's a really great tool, and especially if you're dedicated enough to put a couple of ground rules in before you get started, like how you're going to tag or how you're going to assign yourself or others, it can be a very powerful tool for your productivity. All right, well, cool. Itamar, why don't you tell people where they can find you, where they can read more about this, about your website, Solving Procrastination, and how they can reach out to you if they have any further questions?
I think the best way is to just Google Solving Procrastination. It should be the first result, or you can enter directly solvingprocrastination.com. I actually have a Just Start page that you find from the homepage, which helps people figure out what they should read next. If anyone has any questions, they're very welcome to contact me. There's a contact page linked to the bottom of every page on the site. I'm happy to answer questions that people have. I think one of the things I really enjoy is getting a good question and then being able to integrate the answer to that into my main articles.
All right. Sounds good. Itamar, thank you very much for joining us. This was really informative, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.